Okay. Move to live. We are live. As for YouTube.
Yeah, looks like we are.
Yeah.
Well, for me, it works. At least.
Let me check.
No, it works.
Okay, super. Let me ask people. Yeah, let me open chat and ask people about. Yeah. Oh, see you guys. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. I believe we can start with some.
Well, I guess we can wait for a couple of minutes and talk.
Yeah, exactly.
About weather. I don't know. For me, it's rainy and warm today.
For me, it's partly rainy, partly sunny. It's unclear weather right now.
I believe my turn. That's really unpredictable weather in Krakow, and that's about like minus something in the morning, plus 10 right now, and there will be some jumps in the next few days, and after that again something close to zero. Still waiting for the real spring, and hope that everything will be okay.
Yeah, weird. For me, it was like plus 20 or something like that, like 3 days ago, and then out of sudden it started to snow, and this night it was like below zero. So yeah, very weird weather.
For me too. In San Jose, usually at this time, the weather should be very warm, plus 20 degrees Celsius. I mean, should be, but because I still cannot keep up with Fahrenheit, and I cannot convert from Fahrenheit to Celsius. But right now the weather isn't 20. The temperature is around 10-15 degrees, and the rain's constantly going here. This is very unusual for this period of time.
And do you turn on heating in your apartment?
Yeah. Okay, so I probably we can start. We were waiting for 5 minutes, and I think that.
Okay. Let's start. So, welcome everyone to our virtual meetup from VictoriaMetrics. This is translated on YouTube, and you will be able to see it in the record after the stream or share it after the stream. If you have any questions, feel free to ask them right in the YouTube translation, and then we will cover them once we have a chance live between the slides. So yeah, ask anything. What you want to ask? Yeah, don't be afraid. That's cool. So I guess we can start, and this is our agenda. It was shared before. Today we will cover some of features that we added for the last 3 months since our previous meetup. And I will also provide some updates on the roadmap that was shared on the previous meetup. And then the most exciting talk, I guess, would be from the Alex about VictoriaLogs. So yeah, you will have to wait until my slides end, so you can see his presentation. Okay, cool. So just to start, some stats for Q1 in 2023. So it was like 3 months, but we had like almost 200 issues and 260 pull requests, which is insane. More pull requests than issues. We had 40 contributors, 12 releases. So the latest version right now is 189, and I encourage everyone to update to the latest version. And between those versions, we had like more than 100 features and more than 100 bug fixes. still more features and bug fixes. Okay, among those releases that I mentioned, we also released a new LTS release, which is now 1.87, and it will be supported by January 2023.
2024.
2024. Yeah, sorry, till January 2024. Yeah, so also if you like LTS releases, it's time to update. Okay, what else? The most exciting latest features during this Q1 was streaming aggregation, VictoriaMetrics remote write native protocol, and improvements in VMOs, and of course VictoriaLogs, which will be covered a bit later. So what actually what else we added as well? Our VictoriaMetrics UI, which I really like right now. Like before, I used to debug things in Grafana, doing ad hoc queries and else, but now I prefer vmui personally, and I encourage everyone to try it again. If you tried it and you don't like it like a year ago, it changed a lot during this year. So I recommend to give it a chance one more time, because I really like it, and the features that it had right now, it's really cool. One of the features I also like is dark theme, and yeah, it looks pretty fancy right now, just like dark theme for Grafana. What else we get? We have Explore mode, which was announced on the previous meetup. One of the things to add. So Explore mode in vmui helps you to quickly explore metrics that you have per job or per instance. So you select basically jobs, and you select the instance that you are interested in, and you will have a drop down of all the metrics that this instance and job has, and then it will be automatically plotted. Counters will be automatically rated, gauges will be plotted as is, and it's a pretty convenient tool to explore which metrics your application has. Because maybe you don't control that application, maybe you don't know about all the metrics, and this tool helps you to see what can be interesting for you from that application. What else? Sticky tooltips, which is also a cool feature for me, and I personally requested it, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, so when you check the graph, sometimes you need to compare two or more lines, or exact values at specific moments of time for those lines. So now you can click on the tooltip, and it will stick to the visualization, and you can move it, you can drag it across the screen, and in this way you can select multiple lines and stick their tooltips on the screen, so you can then compare the values. Also, you see that this tooltip automatically shows the min, max, and average values over the whole interval that is plotted right now, which is also pretty cool feature. What else? Cardinality Explorer. It was implemented before Q1, but in this in Q1 it was updated to become more convenient for use. Please revisit it, check it. Now has some helps which explain a bit more how to use Cardinality Explorer. What are major things to note, to understand about your metrics, and yeah, take a try. But I guess this improvement is only in the it's not released yet, but it will be in the next release, will be included in the next release. Meanwhile, you can try it on our playground. Okay, what else? VM Alert now supports Google Cloud and Amazon S3 for rules loading. So you can now specify just a bucket name and path from where to load rules. And this is a cool feature for cases when you have multiple VM alerts and you have only one place for managing your recording and alerting rule files. And then you can just modify them in the bucket, and all VM alerts will automatically reload the changes from it. So yeah, please please check it as well. One thing, it is a part of enterprise, mostly because of the binary size, which was increased by supporting Google Cloud and S3 libraries. What else? Streaming aggregation, really cool feature. So streaming aggregation is a kind of thing which you can use on VictoriaMetrics Single or VM Agent. And what it do, it helps you to pre-aggregate the data you collect before you send it to the central time series database. And why it is cool? Because it helps you to reduce the pressure on database significantly. So what are use cases? For example, you have some IoT devices with bad network connectivity, and you don't want them to send a lot of data, but still you want to catch the most interesting data changes. So you can configure aggregation on those IoT devices. Basically, it's called edge computing or something like that. So you can use VM Agent on those devices, and it will send you only aggregated, for example, only max data points over the time interval. This reduces the network use, but still helps you to get the data that you're interested in. How else it can be used? For example, for pre-aggregating time series, now the common approach to pre-aggregate time series in Prometheus is using recording rules. But the thing with recording rules is that you need to ingest raw data first in the database. And raw data can be quite expensive, especially if you don't control its cardinality or churn rate over that data. So now you can put VM Agent between your client metrics and time series database and configure streaming aggregation to reduce the cardinality. For example, you can calculate only average data, or only max values, or only quantiles or histograms, whatever. And that's basically the same as recording rules, but you don't need to ingest raw data in your database. You don't need to use a lot of resources on pre-computing this data on the central database. So yeah, streaming aggregation is pretty cool, and now we'll cover a bit more about it. So yeah, that's basically what I said, that it helps to reduce the load on your VM storage and VM select, because you pre-aggregate data before you store it. And yeah, that's mostly it. Efficiency. The streaming aggregation is about efficiency. So how it works? Now you can configure it with special command line flag called remote write stream aggregation, and it supports the following configuration format. So you first specify the match selector. That's basically a time series selector where you can select which metrics to affect. For example, you can select only metrics from one specific job, or metrics. Here we select all metrics which has name, basically all metrics. Then we define the time interval on which we will calculate the aggregation. And then we specify outputs. That's basically the functions, aggregation functions, which will be applied to the data. And by is a aggregation modifier, like sum by, instance, and job. So these two labels will be kept and used for the aggregation. And then you can apply additional relabeling before or after the aggregation, which is kind of cool. That's the functions, aggregation functions supported right now in streaming aggregation, and their actual representative in metrics QL. So total is equal to sum, or mean is equal to mean over time. You can find the full list of the functions that you can use in our docs related to VM Agent. Oh, no, it's actually a separate document called streaming aggregation on docs.victoriametrics.com. So yeah, please visit and check. Oh, sorry. Okay, yeah, and that's how it works. So we have this streaming aggregation configuration, and VM Agent starts to receive slowly data sample by sample. And we apply here average aggregation on time interval, I don't know, on some time interval, for example, 1 minute. And we see that VM Agent starts to collect data samples. And once the time window is reached, it produces one sample based on the aggregation function. Now here we calculate the average, and only this aggregated value will be pushed forwarded to remote write URL. Yeah, so data is updated in vmagent's memory every time it gets the data sample, but it is pushed only each aggregation interval configured in streaming aggregation. Yeah, so here how it works. And that's how we can compare it visually, comparing the data produced by streaming aggregation and processing of the raw data with just actual MetricsQL query. And yeah, that's how the blue line is the result of the aggregated data produced by vmagent, and the red line is the raw data. So that's how they are compared. The blue line has less data points, but still it is helpful to use. That's basically like recording rule. Yeah, and that's a few more examples. Here we apply std_var. Oh, no, this std_var, it's output, how it would look like. And we match all count metrics. Yeah, so check our docs at stream aggregation /stream aggregation. I hope you will find it useful. Okay, what else? VictoriaMetrics Remote Write Protocol. This is the feature which Alex recently published on our blog post, on our victoriametrics.com/blog website. You can read more about it, but in few words, what it does, it reduces the amount of traffic you will need to transfer between vmagent and VictoriaMetrics cluster. So it applies additional compression. And on the screenshot, you see the feedback from the users in our public Slack channel. And from users' data, it's like reduce more than 4 times, reducing the traffic produced by vmagent for just applying this remote write native. So actually what this remote write change does, it applies additional the standard compression over the data stream. Sorry, do you hear me, Alex?
Yeah, I hear you. There was some network glitch, but right now it's okay.
Some glitch. Yeah, so it applies additional compression. It will cost you a bit of CPU and vmagent side, but from user's perspective, in this case, it was like unnoticeable. There was no visible change in the CPU usage. And who will need this feature? Basically, people who need to transfer data between multiple availability zones, because this is usually, this type of traffic usually is pricey. So reducing it by 4 times out of box is kind of cool improvement. It will reduce your cost if you need to transfer data to multiple availability zones. For example, if you have one vmagent and it needs to write to 3 zones, it now will write 4 times less data. How to enable it? Basically, just upgrade to version 1.88. It's important that you upgrade both VictoriaMetrics cluster or single components and vmagent. And you don't need to turn on any flags. vmagent will detect if destination supports this native remote write protocol and will automatically switch to it. Yeah, so please try as well. What else? vmous improvements. So vmous got some additional flags to control the amount of requests served globally or per user, globally or individually per user. So now you can control how many requests can be served by vmous, and that's kind of protection from abusing the service. And yeah, please check concurrency limiting at vmous page about this. What else? vmous got built-in load balancing. It now uses list loaded round robin load balancing, which means it will automatically evenly balance requests among VM selects, and you don't need to use extra components like Nginx or rely on DNS balancing in Kubernetes, for example. What else? And also vmous now can automatically retry failed requests. which is pretty useful when you do some updates to existing cluster. For example, you change version of VM select and you do rolling update. And in this case, requests can fail because of the restarts of the components. So VMOs now automatically retries such requests. So a user's query will be served anyway. This is how it looks like visually. So VMOs receives request, processes to one of available backends. And it also tracks in the memory which backend is now serving requests and how many requests it serves for list loaded balancing. And if backend can serve requests for some reason, it is marked as a broken and will be not used for some period of time, short period of time for the new requests. Yeah, but after that, it will be checked again, and if it is active, then requests will be served to this backend. So yeah, VMOs now automatically balances your requests. Okay, roadmap review. So the things that we already discussed on the previous meetup. Let's hear more about updates. So VictoriaMetrics Grafana plugin. It is available for everyone to use. We already using it internally, and we know some of our users VictoriaMetrics also use it because we see some activity issues raised, and some people asked us how to install it better. So it is already there, but it is not yet in the Grafana marketplace because of some issues with the marketplace right now. We can publish it, but we'll see if we would have such an option in the future. And what's cool in the new plugin, besides that it supports all the MetricSQL functions, MetricSQL auto suggestion, all that stuff, it now also allows to trace queries right in the Grafana. So there is a toggle called trace, and you can use it in Explore mode or even right in the Grafana panel. So you can just trace every specific request. For example, if you see that it is kind of slow, you can trace it, and Grafana plugin will plot it right on your screen, and you can investigate on your own, or you can click on Show JSON and copy this JSON and share it with us, for example, or with other community users, people in community, and they can investigate the trace on their own. Because you can, for example, you can copy this JSON trace and use it in vmui, because in vmui you can use you can just paste it there in the trace analyzer tab, and it will plot you any trace which was shared with you, which is also kind of cool, and it helps us to understand a lot about various cases when user complain on slow queries. What else? Open telemetry support. Well, it's not ready yet, but it is in progress, and yeah, we'll see. That mostly depends on Alex right now. What was the obstacle why it's not merged yet? Well, basically because it increased the binary size by 10 megabytes just to support OTLP. It was increasing binary size of VictoriaMetrics from 19 megs to 29 megs, which is kind of insane, like 50% too much. So Nikolai, who is working on these pull requests, made a couple of attempts to reduce this. And for first attempt, he reduced it to 5 megs. And on the latest his attempt, he reduced the binary size to 1 meg, which is now acceptable, I believe. But that's up to Alex. So I hope it will be merged soon. Okay, what else? Stream and aggregation. Yeah, we promised, we delivered. UI for rules management. Here we didn't deliver. That's mostly because of me. I didn't have time to work on this issue, but hope to check on it after the KubeCon. Okay, what else? Hysteresis support in VMalert, also because of me, and I didn't proceed on this issue because I wanted to keep it consistent with the Prometheus implementation. So Prometheus doesn't have right now implementation of hysteresis, but they have a proposal how it can be done. And but it was not like finished yet. So in this case, I wanted to keep it compatible with Prometheus, but so far they didn't finish it and we didn't finish it. So we will see there will be a meetup, virtual meetup on Prometheus side, and they will be discussing hysteresis support once again. And we'll see if there will be some decision made. After that, we will proceed with hysteresis support on our side. Okay, what else? Explore tab delivered. VictoriaLogs. And VictoriaLogs is what Alex will cover right now. So, Alex, would you mind to take over the slides?
Okay. What about questions? Probably we can.
Yeah.
The questions from YouTube channel.
Yeah. Meanwhile, yeah.
Yeah, I have. I wrote down two of them. First one is stream aggregation works for all input of data and all protocols like Influx, Graphite, JSON, all of them.
The answer is yes. The stream aggregation is applied to all the input data for which is received from any protocol supported by VictoriaMetrics or vmagent. So the answer is yes. And actually, when you enable stream aggregation, then vmagent produces only aggregated data to remote storage. It drops all the input raw samples. And sometimes you want to store input samples and also aggregated data, and vmagent also supports this option. You just need to set the option which says please store on also raw data to the remote storage. And stream aggregation can be applied independently per each remote storage configured at vmagent. So you can configure multiple remote storages at single vmagent and configure different aggregation types for different remote storages.
Yeah, one thing from my side, it was to mention that if you need to create some complex logic and create like cover many sources, feel free to use piping of vmagents, like do one aggregation on one, transfer this to another one, and to the remote storage. It's also supported. And feel free to use vmagent for different purposes, like scrape the same targets or accept the same remote write into many vmagents and delegate works to each of them if you need more distributed system. And next question, is there any downside of using stream aggregation?
I am not aware of downsides of using stream aggregation.
It will require more memory, right?
Yeah, but stream aggregation frees more memory at VictoriaMetrics side because it doesn't require sending raw data to VictoriaMetrics and then querying this data when you use recursion rules, for instance, instead of stream aggregation. So if you compare the overall resource usage when stream aggregation is enabled and when you use recursion rules for reducing some high cardinality data, then stream aggregation is pure win compared to aggregations.
And what about time interval? Are there any limitations? Like, can I set to 7 days?
Sorry?
Can I set aggregation interval on vmagent to some insane duration, 7 days?
I see. Right now, you can set arbitrary aggregation interval and stream aggregation, but right now it is designed mostly for quite short intervals, up to 10 minutes, for instance, because it keeps all the state for stream aggregation in memory, and right now it cannot flush the state to disk between vmagent restarts, for instance. So if you set stream aggregation interval to big, for instance, day or week, and then it is high chances that you will restart this vmagent instance and you will lose the aggregated data in this case. But we are working on additional improvements for this case, and in the future, vmagent will be able to flush current state to remote storage before shutdown, and this can help us setting bigger intervals for stream aggregation.
Thank you.
And one question from my side, and it's maybe a downside. What about historical data in streaming aggregation? When I try to ingest like on 5 minutes interval, 15 minutes of data.
The stream aggregation is applied only for samples with the current timestamps. Actually, stream aggregation right now ignores timestamps from input samples. It just takes into account only values of these ingested samples. So you cannot apply stream aggregation for historical data right now, but probably in the future we'll implement this functionality.
Okay, thank you. I believe also recording rules still exist. You can use recording rules for historical data as far as VMLR support replay mode. I believe last question, is it any ATA for OpenTelemetry support release? When we measure this.
Yeah, the OpenTelemetry pull request is mostly ready for merge, so I hope it will be merged probably in the next release. So the ETA is quite short. It's less than months.
Can you press merge button right now?
Sorry?
Can you press merge button right now?
Not yet. I need to review this pull request carefully before merging.
Okay. I believe that was the last question. Thank you so much for all of them. We can go further.
So let's start with VictoriaLogs. Our users frequently ask us when VictoriaMetrics will add VictoriaLogs, and we eventually decided to start working on this VictoriaLogs a few months ago, and it is in development right now, but probably in the near future it will be released. So let's look at VictoriaLogs overview. What is it? How does it compare to other solutions existing on open source market for logs? Let's start. There are two existing solutions, open source solutions for log management right now. This is Elasticsearch stack and Grafana Loki. Let's look at the strong and weak points and compare them to VictoriaLogs. Elasticsearch, the first strong point for Elasticsearch is that it supports full text search, because it's the core feature of Elasticsearch, actually. The second strong point is that Elasticsearch is quite widespread. Many users use it, and for logs collection and analysis. The second feature of Elasticsearch, third feature of Elasticsearch is that it supports quite advanced log analysis via Kibana. And Elasticsearch also has weak point, and one of the most important weak point of Elasticsearch is slow data ingestion and high resource usage and data ingestion, such as CPU and memory. And also, Elasticsearch compresses data not very well when storing this data to disk, and this may require too big amounts of disk space for big amounts of logs. Elasticsearch also misses log streaming concept. I will cover this concept later in this presentation. if you don't know what does it mean, then you'll know about this later, a bit later. And Elasticsearch also misses the ability for querying advanced stats from various access logs, which are generated, for instance, by web services such as Nginx or Apache or something different. And Elasticsearch also misses good integration with command line tools. Elasticsearch doesn't provide such command line tools, which can be used seamlessly with other existing command line tools. Like, for instance, you cannot select some log entries from Elasticsearch and then grab them, sort, tail, and so on in command line. Let's look at the Grafana Loki strong points. The first strong point of Grafana Loki compared to Elasticsearch is that it uses much lower amounts of CPU and memory during data ingestion. And that's why people like Grafana Loki. And also Grafana Loki provides much better compression rate for the data stored on disk compared to Elasticsearch. And Grafana Loki supports log string concept, which we will cover a bit later. And Grafana Loki query language can be used somehow to collect some advanced statistics on access logs. Grafana Loki also has quite decent integration with command line tools, which is named logcli. But Grafana Loki also has weak points, and the first weak point of Grafana Loki is that its query language is non-trivial to use for typical use cases for logs. If you ever tried Grafana Loki query language logql, I think that you're familiar with this pain. And Grafana Loki supports in some kind of full text search. You can search for logs using full text search, but this has a price, and the price is that full text search in Grafana Loki is quite slow, because Grafana Loki scans all the unpacks and scans all the log messages when you use full text search, and this can be quite slow if you have big amounts of logs to search. And Grafana Loki provides data source for logs analysis for Grafana UI, but this data source, this is my personal opinion, isn't so good compared to Kibana for logs analysis. And one of the main weak points of Grafana Loki is that it doesn't support setting individual fields, individual labels per each log line, like in structured logs. For instance, you cannot set IP, user ID, trace ID, and so on labels individually per each log line, and store this data to Grafana Loki. Actually, you can do this in Grafana Loki, but if you do this, then Grafana Loki will eat all your available memory because of high cardinality issues. Because all these labels will, all these different label values will generate different streams in Grafana, inside Grafana and Grafana Loki, and this will eat all the available memory and will slow down your queries, and actually it will not work on large scale. So what's VictoriaLogs? This open source log management system from VictoriaMetrics company. So VictoriaLogs should have the same features as VictoriaMetrics, and let's look at these features, repeat these features. The important feature is that VictoriaLogs is easy to set up and operate. It's the same way as VictoriaMetrics. You just download binary, start it with default configuration, and it just works. It can receive logs, and you can query these logs, and you don't need to set up complex microservice architecture. And VictoriaLogs also scales vertically and horizontally in the same way as VictoriaMetrics. You can start from Raspberry Pi, install VictoriaMetrics on the Raspberry Pi, and with one CPU core and hundreds of megabytes of memory, and then scale up it to a server with hundreds of CPU cores and terabytes of memory, and VictoriaMetrics will efficiently scale to these amounts of resources, and its performance and capacity will scale. And also VictoriaLogs will provide cluster version in the same way as VictoriaMetrics, and the cluster version can scale horizontally on multiple nodes, and the scalability will be very good in the same way as VictoriaMetrics, and even better because we learned our mistakes when creating cluster version of VictoriaLogs. So there are some bottlenecks in VictoriaMetrics for cluster version, and these bottlenecks will be lifted in VictoriaLogs. So VictoriaLogs will scale even better than VictoriaMetrics cluster. And VictoriaLogs also is optimized for low resource usage, such as memory, CPU, and disk space, in similar ways VictoriaMetrics. The first release of VictoriaMetrics will support data ingestion via Elasticsearch and Grafana Loki formats. So you can replace your existing solutions, Elasticsearch and Grafana Loki, with VictoriaLogs, and it will work without additional configuration changes on log collection side. And VictoriaMetrics also supports stream concept from Loki. We'll cover the stream concept later. And VictoriaLogs provides its own query language, yet another query language for logs, because we were not satisfied with existing query languages from Elasticsearch and from Grafana Loki. So we decided to create our own query language, which is very powerful, but yet very easy to use for typical use cases. And this will be covered later. And VictoriaLogs is in active development right now and will be released soon. Let's look at LogsQL. How does it work? And different examples. LogsQL allows for searching for logs by time. Let's look at a few examples. The first example is you can write time colon -5m 2 dots, and this query means that let's search for logs for which were ingested during the last 5 minutes. You can specify a time range, like in this case, and this case will return logs on the time range from 1 hour ago until 5 minutes ago. You can specify different time ranges. For instance, you can specify time ranges in days. And in this case, the VictoriaLogs will return you logs for the March 2023. This can be simplified to just writing, specifying only the months part, and this query will return logs for the same March 2023. And you can specify, for instance, only time with only hours, and in this case, VictoriaLogs will return on EU logs only for this hour. It is recommended specifying while VictoriaLogs can work without specifying this filter on time. It is recommended to always setting up this filter on time, because this filter on time reduces the amounts of logs which should be searched and optimizes query performance. Let's look at full text search examples in VictoriaLogs. If you just write down some word in query string, then VictoriaLogs will return you all the logs which contain this word in any case, in uppercase, in lowercase, or in mixed case. For instance, if you write down just error in query string, then you will get all the log messages which contain the error word in any case. You can put a star at the end of your word. In this case, VictoriaLogs will return you all the log entries which contain the word which start from this prefix. And this works also for uppercase, lowercase, and mixed case. And if you want to search for logs which contain some entry with the exact case, then just drop your word in quotes, double quotes. In this case, VictoriaLogs will return you only log messages which contain this word with the exact case you written. If you put a phrase inside double quotes, then VictoriaLogs will return you logs containing exactly this phrase. And if you want searching for logs which contain the exact message, I mean the log message is the same as you want to search them, wrap it into the exact function. And in extreme cases, if you are not satisfied with full text search, you can use arbitrary complex regex for log searching. For instance, this query searches for logs containing HTTP or HTTPS URLs in these logs, but such functionality log comes with price. It is the search for logs with regex isn't so fast compared to search for regular full text search. So use it only when you need it, when you really need it. And search queries in VictoriaLogs can be combined with OR and NOT operators. Let's look at how does it work. You can combine write two words and combine it with OR operator. In this case, VictoriaLogs will return you all the logs which contain both words. For instance, in this case, it will return logs with error or warning words. The same applies to AND operator. This query will return you all the logs which contain words starting with error, and also the log message should contain words starting with fail. For instance, error, the file failed to open. You can negate queries by prepending these queries with a NOT operator. For instance, this query returns all the logs with error word, but without full bar pass inside these logs. And you can use braces for writing arbitrary complex queries. For instance, this query returns logs for the last hour, which contain error or warning message, or word inside message, but doesn't contain debug word in this message. By default, all this search is performed in log message itself, but logs can contain other labels such as level, IP, user ID, trace ID, and so on, which are named usually structured login. And logscale allows searching in any label via special syntax. You just write the label name, write down the column, and then write query. Let's look at a few examples. For instance, if you want to search for log messages which contain error or warning words inside a level label, then you can use this query. Or, for instance, if you want to search for error logs for which contain some specified trace ID, you can use this query. So let's look at what is log stream means. The log stream is a stream of log messages which are generated by a single instance of some application. A single instance means a single process, such as single Linux process, Unix daemon, a single Docker container, or single container inside Kubernetes pod. Usually, logs which are generated by a single instance are analyzed. These logs are usually written into some file, and this file is usually analyzed with some command line tools such as grep, cut, sort, cut, and so on. When you collect logs in distributed system, then you can uniquely identify log streams. The source, actually, this is the source of logs with TCP address of this instance from where you receive these logs. When you are familiar with Prometheus concept, such concept is named instance in Prometheus. And multiple instances of single application, such as shards or replicas, can be identified by the application name, which is usually named as job in Prometheus ecosystem. Additional labels can be attached to log streams which can simplify further analysis of these logs. For instance, environment, data center, zone, namespace, and so on. And Elasticsearch doesn't support log streams, as I mentioned before. It misses this concept. So it may be non-trivial to analyze logs in Elasticsearch, which are obtained from a single application, from a single instance of the application. And Grafana Loki supports log stream concept from the beginning, and VictoriaLogs also supports log stream concept from the beginning. Thanks to Grafana Loki for this concept. Let's look at how log streams can be queried in LogSQL. They can be queried with via special stream label using Prometheus label filters. For instance, if you write down in the query such query, stream job equal nginx, then VictoriaLogs will return you all the log messages obtained from the stream with the job nginx. You can write down arbitrary complex filters inside the stream query. For instance, this query return you all the log messages at QA and staging, but which are received from every zone except US East zone. And you can obviously add additional filters to the query. For instance, this query selects all the log messages for the last hour, which are received from Nginx log stream, and all these messages should contain label with error word. So we have labels which can be assigned to streams, and we have also labels which can be assigned individually per each log line. Well, let's look at the difference between these kinds of labels. The first difference is that stream labels remain static. This means that they do not change over time when a single stream exists. And we recommend setting stream labels such as instance and job in order to simplify correlation between Prometheus metrics and logs in the same way as Grafana Loki recommends do this. So in this, if you we'll specify instance and job labels for every log stream in VictoriaLogs, and also we'll specify the same instance and job labels at metrics received from the applications which generate the stream. Then it will be quite easier to correlate, to use the same filters on instance and job, or similar filters on instance and job, for obtaining log messages for the same services metrics. Stream labels allows grouping logs by individual stream during querying, and this can simplify some log analysis. And also we recommend specifying stream labels during queries for logs, because stream labels are indexed in VictoriaMetrics in special index, and this index reduces the amounts of logs which needs to be searched later, and this also improves query speed, and the query speed improvement can be quite big. Let's look at the log labels, log level labels. Such labels as level, trace ID, IP, user ID, response duration, and so on. They can change inside every stream, and every log message inside log stream can have individual values for these labels, obviously. Such labels are known as log fields from structured logging. And such labels are useful during querying. You can search for these labels and group data obtained from logs by these labels. Also, LogScale provides good functionality for log analysis. Let's look at the example. It is quite common to collect access logs from Nginx, for instance. And all these access logs, old-fashioned people usually use command line tools for analyzing these logs, such as grep, cut, sort, unique-tail, and so on. For example, if you want to obtain top 10 paths with the biggest number of some error, HTTP errors, or to calculate per domain percentile of response duration and the number of requests. So, for instance, to obtain the number of unique IP addresses which are requested from the given URL. then you can do all these tasks with some command line kung fu with grep, cut, sort, and so on functions. But both Elasticsearch and Grafana Loki do not provide functionality for efficiently performing these tasks. Actually, Elasticsearch completely misses all this functionality, and Grafana Loki provides some kind of functionality for log analysis. But this functionality is non-trivial to use, as I mentioned before. And VictoriaMetrics comes to rescue, VictoriaLogs, comes to rescue for this case. Let's look at the example. For instance, we need to obtain top 10 paths from Nginx streams from prod for the last hour with the biggest number of requests, which led to 404 error. Additionally, we need to calculate the number of unique IP addresses seen per each requested path. Let's look how it will look in LogsQL. At first, we select logs for the last hour from Nginx stream at prod using this query. Then we extract IP address, path, and HTTP status code from log message itself using extract syntax. This is a pretty simple syntax, much simpler than regular expression, for instance. Then we apply arbitrary filter. In this case, we just leave only log messages with status containing 404. And then we calculate stats grouped by path. We calculate the number of requests and the number of unique IP addresses obtained from this request. Then we sort the results by requests in descending order. And finally, we limit the number of results by 10. That's how this query looks in LogsQL. VictoriaLogs also will provide first-class command line integration with existing tools. For instance, you can write down arbitrary query in command line tool and then feed the results to conventional command line tools such as grep, tail, and so on for further processing. So let's recap. What does VictoriaMetrics do? This is an open source solution for log messaging management. It is easy to set up and operate. It is optimized for low resource usage, such as memory, disk, and CPU. It provides easy to use but very powerful query language, which is named LogsQL. It scales both vertically and horizontally, and it supports data ingestion from Logstash, FluentBit, and PromTail from the beginning. So it can be used as a replacement for Elasticsearch and Grafana Loki without the need to change configuration at logs collector side. Let's look at some common questions which are asked about VictoriaLogs from our users. The first question is when VictoriaLogs will be ready to use. The answer is soon. We are busy with active development of VictoriaLogs right now, and I hope it will be ready soon. The next question is VictoriaLogs open source? Yes, sure. 100% VictoriaLogs is open source. How about enterprise features? Yes, VictoriaLogs will provide enterprise version of VictoriaLogs. And this enterprise version will provide the following functions, which are related to GDPR, security, authorization, rate limiting, and anomaly detection. But the most of the rest of the features which are mentioned in this presentation will be available in open source version. How does VictoriaLogs compare to ClickHouse for logs? As you know, ClickHouse is very efficient for storing logs, and many companies, big companies such as Cloudflare, for instance, or Uber, uses ClickHouse for storing logs. And the question is why you need VictoriaLogs in this case if ClickHouse works good with logs. The answer is that ClickHouse needs fine-tuning for logs collection. You need to think you need which database structure you need, which tables you need, which order case you need, which columns in this table you need for obtaining the maximum performance. Additionally, you need to think how to ingest the data to ClickHouse, because ClickHouse doesn't accept logs by default. You need writing down or using some additional service for logs ingestion and then pushing them into ClickHouse. Also, you need to invent your own query language, because SQL in ClickHouse, why it is very powerful, it is not so good compared to LogSQL, for instance. So you need to invent some language and to write down some additional service for querying these logs stored in ClickHouse. And you need to set up all this stuff so it works seamlessly. And this may be quite complex. So if you cannot afford all these tasks I mentioned before, it will be much easier to just run VictoriaLogs, and it will work out of the box. And at the same time, it will provide the same efficiency compared to ClickHouse. I mean, CPU memory and disk space usage, and because it uses similar ideas, core ideas inside as ClickHouse. Will VictoriaLogs provide data sources for Grafana, Loki, and Kibana? Yes, this supporting for data sources in Grafana and Kibana is in our roadmap, but probably this support will not be available in the first release of VictoriaLogs. How about cloud version of VictoriaLogs? Yes, we have such plans. Will VictoriaLogs support JSON and structured logs? Yes, as I mentioned before, VictoriaLogs supports structured logging from the beginning. This means you can write down, push structured logs into VictoriaLogs and then efficiently query these structured logs. And it works out of the box without any cardinality issues, unlike in Grafana Loki. Will data partitioning be supported? Yes, VictoriaLogs partitions data by weeks. We decided that it's quite common partition duration for logs, and every partition in VictoriaLogs is fully independent and self-contained and stored in separate directory. And this means that you can remove these partitions, move these partitions to other VictoriaLogs instances, archive these partitions, backup these partitions, restore this partition, and you can do this individually per each partition. So that's all. If you have questions, you can ask them in our YouTube chat. Artem?
Actually, I have
many questions already.
Yeah, I actually have my own question. First, that's regarding multi-tenancy. Are you going to support it?
Yes, multi-tenancy will be supported by VictoriaLogs from the beginning, and it will be supported in both in open source version. But
what about data compatibility? Yeah.
But querying from multiple tenants will not be available in open source version by default, but probably it will be available in enterprise version of VictoriaLogs eventually.
Yeah, as far as we don't have it for VictoriaMetrics.
Sorry?
I believe. As far as we don't have it for VictoriaMetrics, I believe that we will add this feature there and there. The next question about data compatibility between single and cluster version.
Yes, this was one of mistakes when we designed storage format for VictoriaMetrics. In VictoriaMetrics on this format for single node version and cluster version isn't compatible between each other, so you cannot move data from on disk from cluster to single node and back in VictoriaMetrics, and that's why VictoriaLogs will support the same format on this format for data, so you can start with single node version of VictoriaLogs and then migrate to cluster, migrate all the data from single node version of VictoriaLogs to cluster. Just copy this data.
Thanks. Like my questions over, so let me go through the community questions from bottom up. First one, where is source code? Where is the documentation?
Yes, as I mentioned, VictoriaLogs isn't released yet, and so there is no source code yet, and we are going to publish all the source code on the first release of VictoriaLogs with the documentation.
The second one, how user can specify streams for the external agents like Fluentbeat, Logstash, Prometheus?
Yeah, good question. We decided that it will be much easier to set up stream labels for instance, which are let's start from the beginning. When you use Fluentbeat, for instance, for data ingestion, for logs ingestion into Elasticsearch, then Fluentbeat usually generates big amounts of different fields per each log message. I mean, structured fields. And some of these fields, such as host name, for instance, file name, application name, can be put inside stream level, inside stream labels. And we thought that the most easy way to add these labels into stream would be to specify these labels in query arc in the URL to data to remote storage. In this case, initially the URL contains path to Elasticsearch. You change this URL to path to VictoriaLogs and add in this URL a list of labels from these log messages, which should be put inside stream level. That's how it will work. As for Grafana Loki from tail case, this is another problem, because in from tail and Grafana Loki, there is no log level fields. There are only stream level fields. But users frequently improperly use these fields, and they start storing, for instance, IP addresses or trace ID information inside different fields in Grafana Loki, and this usually leads to cardinality issues at Grafana Loki side. So VictoriaLogs will also support specifying a list of such fields at Grafana Loki site, which should be moved from stream back to structured logs fields. And this will eventually instantly fix cardinality issues related to Grafana Loki.
Thank you. The next question, sorry. What about OpenTelemetry support?
I like OpenTelemetry. As I know, OpenTelemetry for logs isn't finalized yet. So if it will be finalized and stabilized, then we'll definitely add support for it into VictoriaLogs.
Okay, thank you. And I believe the last one is initial version, not last one, is the initial version of VictoriaLogs will have own UI or only CLI?
Yeah, the initial version will have only very simple UI. This UI will provide you ability to enter query, view query results, log messages, and also probably it will provide you ability to draw some graphs as Kibana or Grafana does for logs.
Perfect. Thank you. And I will expand the last question. What about VictoriaMetrics ecosystem and VictoriaLogs, like vmagent, vmalert, Restore, vmos, gateway? Are we going to add support of all of these things for VictoriaLogs, or that will be some independent to it?
Some components will provide support for VictoriaLogs from the beginning. For instance, vmos can be used with VictoriaLogs from the beginning, because vmos talks to backends via HTTP, and VictoriaLogs also will provide HTTP API, and so you can use vmos for authorization and load balancing in the same way as you use it for VictoriaMetrics. There will be definitely some additional components in VictoriaLogs ecosystem. For instance, there is a demand for components which could aggregate, transform logs before ingestion them into VictoriaLogs. Such kind of stream aggregation for logs, and I believe we will eventually add such component into VictoriaLogs ecosystem.
Okay, I believe that was the last question regarding VictoriaLogs. The last one from my side. You mentioned that some old-fashioned people use CLI, ref, cut, and all this stuff. Do you use all command that you mentioned on daily basis?
Sorry, Artem, it looks like some issues in your internet.
Oh, sorry.
Could you repeat again?
Yeah. Do you hear me right now?
Not very good. Let's try again.
Let me write down the question in chat, and Alex and you, Alex and Roman, can cover it. Sorry for that.
So let's wait until Artem will write down this question in chat.
Yeah. Meanwhile, after we finish, there will be like short AMA session, and if you have questions not related to logs, you can ask them. Basically, any questions that you have, you can put them on YouTube chat, and we'll cover them later.
Artem,
yeah, so Artem's question is, you mentioned about the old-fashioned people who use tail, head, crab. Do you use it on daily basis yourself?
right now, I do not use these commands on daily basis, but I was using these commands on daily basis previously when my work was related to logs analysis more. And I liked using command line tools for log analysis. I prefer using command line tools for log analysis over graphical user interfaces such as Grafana or Kibana, because I don't know, because I use it to because it's much simpler to analyze big amounts of logs in command line tools, to gather some statistics, to grep these logs, to extract some information from them, to write some ad hoc queries compared to graphical user interface.
Okay, I guess based on this response, viewers can tell in which tool you write in the code.
Yeah, I write the code in Vim.
Right.
That can explain why I like command line tools.
You can save some money on licenses. Okay, I believe, yeah, that's all questions. So we have some slides left on the first presentation. JJ, do you want to take over? Max, if you are there, can you switch to the previous slide deck? You're right. Oh yeah, so this was VictoriaLogs preview, and yeah, JJ.
Thanks. I'm Jean-Jérôme, JJ, and I'm just going to walk you through a couple of things that we want to communicate to you. First of all, it's where to find us over the next few months. We're going to be participating in a number of different conferences, and there's also a couple of talks that we're doing at online conferences as well. So you'll find us in 1 month from now, first of all, at KubeCon Europe in Amsterdam, and it'd be great to meet you there. If you're planning to be there, we'll be at booth at S16 in the exhibition hall, and it'd be great to meet you there. Roman is doing a talk then in May at SlowConf, and we're also going to be in person at Percona Live in Denver, which is the open source database conference that Percona do every year. It's the ex-MySQL user conference, which is now Percona Live, and it's in Denver this year in the middle of May. We'll then be at Monitorama for the first time. That's a conference in Portland in the US that exclusively focuses on monitoring and observability. So we're looking forward to being there. And finally, we'll be in Berlin that same week at GopherCon. So if you're planning to attend any of these, we'd love to see you. And if there's any conferences that we're not at or that you would love to see us at, let us know. And if there are conferences where you think we should be talking, it'd be great to know that as well. So feel free to contact us about that, and we'd love to, coordinate on that. On the next slide, just so I did the VictoriaMetrics. So these are our latest blogs. If you're not following our blog, I recommend you do. The latest one was on network cost savings with the new remote write protocol feature that Alex talked about earlier. There's also information about our LTS releases, and how they work and what to be aware of there. And then there's a couple of other blogs on the latest updates, for example, around backup components. You can see it here, and the rules backfilling for via VM Alert. The benchmark blog was pretty popular, so if you haven't read that yet, I recommend you check it out as well. So this is all on our blog on VictoriaMetrics.com. We've also been in the news, which is the next slide. We've had a number of press releases, but also we're starting to do interviews with different journalists, which is quite nice to see. So, for instance, the first one, Computer Weekly, with Adrian Bridgewater, who is a great journalist in the open source space. He writes exclusively about open source, and he asked the question whether it's time for time series databases. So I encourage you to read that article that he wrote. We then did an announcement on our growth of last year. Thanks to everyone in the community who helped us achieve that. Massive growth both in downloads, but also for our company in general. So if you haven't read that blog yet or this announcement, please do so. We were also listed in Information Age around amongst the best monitoring tools for Kubernetes. We were recommended there, which was a nice article. And you can see the other ones. The last one here from the Stack is a really nice article on kind of the overall story of VictoriaMetrics. So if you want to know more about the background, about the team, about how VictoriaMetrics came to be in the first place, please do read that article by Martin Feige in the Stack. And then finally, speaking of stories, what's really the best is when you talk about VictoriaMetrics. So we'd love to see those stories. And if you have a story to tell about VictoriaMetrics, we'd love to hear it, whether you want to write a blog about it or do a case study with us, talk about it in your own channels. We don't do many videos, so if you want to do a video about VictoriaMetrics, we'd love to work with you on that. Feel free to contact us either via email or in our community Slack, and we'd love to hear your story. Feel free to let us know about it, and we'd love to help you publish it. And that's everything from the communication front. You can follow us, of course, on our website, on our Twitter channel, on LinkedIn, Reddit. The community Slack is a great place to be. And we're also in Telegram, where you can talk to us or to other VictoriaMetrics users. And that's everything from the communications front. Thanks.
Thanks, Jay. And we will publish all the slides, so you could click the links on these slides later in the YouTube translation.
Yeah. Do we have any questions?
No, we don't. Let's go to the AMA session.
Oh, yeah, I guess for AMA session you need questions as well.
I have several. I can start.
Okay.
So, first one, we are actively working on VictoriaLogs. We have VictoriaMetrics. What improvements from VictoriaLogs will be ported back to VictoriaMetrics? And why?
Very good question. Yes, VictoriaLogs will support storing data to object storage. From the beginning, probably, or from the very soon, because it is designed to store data on logs on object storage from the beginning. So VictoriaMetrics also will eventually gain support for storing data on object storage, and this feature we actually added the functionality needed for this feature in VictoriaMetrics, and this functionality will be available in the next release. And this functionality also was needed for Windows support in VictoriaMetrics, actually. So the next release of VictoriaMetrics will support running on Windows from out of the box. So this is one of the improvements which VictoriaMetrics already received from VictoriaLogs development. Another improvement is currently VictoriaMetrics stores inverted index separately from data. This means that the data is partitioned by months in VictoriaMetrics, but index for searching for this data isn't partitioned by months. And this may complicate data management. I mean, it may complicate moving partitions of data with index between servers, archiving these partitions or deleting these partitions and so on at VictoriaMetrics side. And VictoriaLogs already solves this issue. Every partition, as I already mentioned in VictoriaLogs, will be completely independent of each other. You can just make with this partition whatever you want, move it to another servers, delete them, archive them, and so on. So probably VictoriaMetrics will eventually support the same level of partition independency as VictoriaLogs. These are two main features out of my head, which appeared initially in VictoriaLogs and will eventually be integrated into VictoriaMetrics.
So
Okay.
like VictoriaMetrics 2, or it will be reported to the first version?
Sorry?
I mean, will it be like VictoriaMetrics 2.0, or it will be backported to the first version?
Good question. I don't know. It depends on whether we will figure out how to add support for these features without breaking backward compatibility with on storage level with the current version of VictoriaMetrics. If we will figure out how to do it, then these features will be available in VictoriaMetrics 1.0 versions. And in another case, we will have to make VictoriaMetrics 2.0 version, which will be completely incompatible in storage level with VictoriaMetrics 1 version.
Mm-hmm. And I would also add that it would be fair to add that having the global index also has its own advantages, but it is likely not satisfying the most of the needs with high churn metrics rate in modern monitoring.
Yeah.
Okay. I also missed one question during the previous session, so let me ask it here. Initial version of VictoriaLogs will come with some benchmarks, or that's up to community?
It depends. It depends on whether we will have time for running the benchmarks. But we are very happy when community runs these benchmarks and provide results, publish these results, because benchmarks which are performed by vendors such as VictoriaMetrics or other company aren't fair usually, or probably they may be fair, but people usually think that they are not fair because it's hard to make proper benchmark of your product with third-party products. It is much better to run benchmarks by independent users.
Yeah, and for this, we're trying to provide benchmarking tool, so users can use it and without spending too much time on doing the benchmarking. Specifically to address this issue, we created this Prometheus benchmark repo under VictoriaMetrics organization, and we use it internally as well. And it is quite like product agnostic. It works with any Prometheus compatible stuff. So if you want to evaluate or compare VictoriaMetrics to anything else, or even just compare, I don't know, Prometheus to Thanos or whatever, you can use that tool, and that will save you some time on configuring. Probably we should have something like that for logs. So you provide tool for users to do the benchmarking on their own without benchmarking.
Thank you. My comment on that, so when you do benchmark, you know YOTL really good. And that's allow you to use it and like really efficient. And when you do benchmark other company products, not yours, you don't know such small details to get the maximum value from the hardware, all this stuff. That's why I believe some of them benchmark may be biased. Community, any questions? No. Guys, anything that we want to discuss more?
No, I guess we can conclude it. It's almost
2 hours.
Oh, yeah. 1 hour 40 minutes. Yeah, thank you everyone who participated in the meetup. We will try to make them regular and provide more information about what we are doing, what is expected in the next months of development and so on. If you like what we do, if you like this format of meetups, let us know, because yeah, it's like an open source. You rely on the user's feedback, so in the most of cases. So yeah, let us know what you think, and if we need to change something, if we need to do it differently, just let us know. As Artem and Alex said, this presentation, YouTube video record and slides will be available after the meetup, so you can share it or watch later. And yeah, thank you everyone for coming, and have a nice day.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Yeah, thank you guys.